my understanding that they were going to ask the court to play Mr. McKenzie's statements to the Vanderbilt authorities, and the police, possibly the police department, play his entire statements. And I don't think that's a proper way to put in evidence. I think it's a prior inconsistent statement. If he denies making the statement, then they can play the part that's inconsistent, but you just don't play the witness's whole statement to attempt to impeach him, especially if he admits
he admitted that he lied.
Yeah, he's admitted he lied in all his statements. I mean, I think they can question him about something he may have said. If it's inconsistent, they can play that small part, but to ask this jury to sit here and listen to every statement he's ever made, I think is not appropriate under the law, and it's not the way you introduce it. It's called a prior inconsistent statement for a reason.
Well, what say you?
Your Honor, I believe listening to Your Honor's ruling, I think what will happen is that we'll just have specific questions and then use the prior statements to impeach him if he...
Okay, and that's fine. And as you know, prior inconsistent statements are not evidence, and that's part of the jury instruction. All right.
But it can be used to impeach his credibility.
It can be, yes. Sure. Yeah, anyway.
All rise.
All right, please be seated. Okay.
All right, Mr. McKenzie. Here we are. Mr. McKenzie, what did you do to prepare for your testimony today?
I went over prior statements that I made.
Okay. Which ones? You made a lot of prior statements.
Ma'am?
Which ones did you go over?
All of them.
All of them?
Turn that mic towards you.
Okay. And do you still currently play football for Alcorn?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you start going there?
2 years ago.
In 2014?
Yes, ma'am. I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
14 season.
Is Jay Hobson still the coach?
No, ma'am.
Who's the coach now?
Coach Fred McNair. He was a quarterback coach when Jay Hobson was the head coach.
Okay. Does it still stand that if they get any proof that you're guilty, you'll be suspended?
It's never been stated.
That's never been stated?
Not that I know of.
We'll come right back to that. You have family here in Nashville, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You have children?
Yes, ma'am.
How old are they?
5 and 2.
Okay. Now on direct, you testified about your relationship with Mr. Batey.
Yes, ma'am.
You claim you all were like brothers.
Yes, ma'am.
When did you meet him?
It was on a visit I seen you in high school.
When did you meet Mr. Banks the same time or before?
It's the same time.
Okay. And you are charged in the same counts as Mr. Batey, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
5 counts of aggravated rape,
Yes, ma'am.
2 counts of aggravated sexual battery.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And on July 23rd, you didn't know Brendan Vandenburg?
No, ma'am.
Did anyone else know him?
No,
Mr.
ma'am. We
Banks?
just knew he was a new guy on the team.
New guy on the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it fair to say he was about 6'5", 230, big guy?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you've acknowledged on direct that you've given multiple accounts of this, correct? Multiple statements to
Yes.
different people?
Yes, ma'am.
4 different times, right?
Somewhere around there. I'm not sure how many.
First time to student conduct?
Yes.
On June 25th?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, thank you. June 25th, 2013 was the first time to student conduct?
Yes, ma'am.
June 27, 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the time to Detective Mayo?
Yes, ma'am.
July 17th, 2013
Yes, ma'am.
to Detective Mayo?
Yes, ma'am.
And September 14th, 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And it is your testimony that you lied in each of those?
Yes, ma'am.
So when did you start telling the truth?
My last statement.
Which was January 2015 when you testified?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So which last statement?
The one before that.
Okay. So you're saying you started telling the truth in 2014?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to talk to you about your first interview
Okay.
with student conduct.
Yes, ma'am.
You were asked to tell the truth
I was.
by Vanderbilt officials.
Yes, ma'am.
You know Mr. G.L. Black?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, would your statement, Bank's statement, and Mr. Batey's statement all be the same from that day?
It's very similar.
Okay. And you knew that if you lied, you would lose your scholarship?
That wasn't stated at the time. It was a possibility.
right? Well, it wasn't stated that you would get dismissed from the football team?
No, ma'am.
Okay. But that happened after?
Yes, ma'am.
And you actually started looking for other colleges pretty soon after that, right?
We talked about it. If we didn't know what was going to happen, we all talked about if we got put dismissed from Vandenburg, where would we go?
Okay. Did you have a lawyer at this time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So your statement on that day was pretty much nothing happened, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now in your second interview that you gave June 27, 2013,
Yes, ma'am.
you gave it to Detective Mayo and Sergeant Shreve.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you agree to tell the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
And you stated that you and Mr. Batey didn't help bring her up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Banks and Vandenburg did?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was true?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Said nothing? And that's the part you're saying is a lie?
Yes, ma'am.
But you told Detective Mayo the girl was really drunk.
Yes, ma'am.
Told him she was drunk mumbling.
She mumbled when we first seen her in the car.
Okay. Was this the same story that you had given to Vanderbilt?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have a lawyer at this time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I want to talk about your third interview,
Okay.
July 17th. Was it with Detective Mayo again?
Yes, ma'am.
You have attorneys at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And let's talk about what you knew at this time. Did you know there were serious charges against you? Or that may be brought against you?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you hadn't been arraigned yet, and you hadn't had your charges formally read yet, had you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you wanted immunity, correct?
I guess.
And did you sign an agreement for your truthful testimony?
I don't think I did.
Okay. Now, I believe you stated that you told the partial truth on July 17th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we kind of got to go through and dissect what's true and what's not true with you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, on July 17th of 2013, you stated Mr. Batey was really clowning, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You stated he was really drunk. You said, I'll put that out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
You tell them Mr. Batey peed on her, and that was like he didn't even know what he was doing.
Yes, ma'am.
That was true.
Yes, ma'am.
You say we all had drinks, but not to the point of not knowing what we're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
You said we all had drinks, but to the point on not knowing what you were doing, I would say Vandenburg and Cory, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I believe they showed you a picture of Mr. Batey flipping you off with his butt in Miss Lackey's face,
Yes, ma'am.
and you had his phone,
Yes, ma'am.
and you told them It was almost like he didn't even know what he was doing.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You described that atmosphere in the room as clowning around.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right?
At the time,
Okay. And in this one, when you're partially telling the truth, you go on to describe clowning around. You stated that you had a bad angle. You couldn't see everything.
yes, ma'am.
Is that true?
To a certain extent.
Okay. You told the detectives that you did not see him stick his fingers in her. Right?
I'm not sure if I said that or not.
You're not sure what you said?
No, ma'am.
Now, you said you read all of your statements before you came here today, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, if you said you did not see him stick his fingers in her, you don't remember that, is what you're saying right
I
now?
mean, I could have. I'm not sure if I said those exact words or not.
You also stated Mr. Batey played like he was going to sit on her face,
Yes, ma'am.
but you weren't sure if he actually did.
Yes, ma'am.
Then that picture that you were showed a little bit ago of Mr. Batey,
Yes, ma'am.
you stated you didn't know what he was doing. You guessed he was peeing.
No, ma'am, I didn't say that.
You didn't say that? Okay.
Which time are we talking about in this
July.
earlier testimony or in
We're-
his statement?
We're still on the statement from July the
You have to be specific.
7th.
Well, yeah, because she
I
said
haven't moved from that one yet, Your
Well,
Honor.
I think he was interpreting your question as referring to his earlier testimony. That's why I say you need to be specific.
Okay, for the, Mr. McKenzie, we're going to be talking about July 17th, 2013, the statement you made on that day,
Okay.
until I move forward, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, on that day, when they showed you a picture of the same picture you just saw in here,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
said you don't know what he's doing, you guess he's peeing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were asked on that day whether or not Cory had sex with her. I believe they said whether Cory effed her. And you said, I don't think he had sex with her. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
You went on to say you remember something hit with his finger, but don't know if he had sex or not, right?
Right.
Okay. And on that day, you were specifically asked about a penis in the anal area or the mouth, and you stated you don't think so.
Could have.
On that day, right?
I'm not sure.
One second, please. Your Honor, may I refresh his memory?
If you show him the transcript, you can refresh his recollection.
Yes, I have it. Let's take it to him. Would you just read that to yourself, the highlighted part?
Pardon me?
Which transcript are we
I think it's
Still
on
on
the third
July.
statement.
Still on July 17th. July 17th.
Second to last.
Second to last page. Did you read the highlighted area?
Yes, ma'am.
And now, you were specifically asked about penis in her anal area or her mouth, and you stated you don't think so, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'll take it. Now I want to talk to you about the phones that you had on that night. Okay? On July 17th, when you were giving a statement, you did say that Mr. Batey gave you his phone,
Yes, ma'am.
and you also had your phone,
Yes, ma'am.
and you took either videos or pictures, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you didn't know whose phone you had used to take videos or pictures at that time,
Correct.
right? Who else was taking pictures?
Vandenburg, Banks, and Batey himself.
Okay. And when you were asked about it on the 17th, you said Vandenburg was taking pics, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said Banks had his phone in the hallway, but you didn't say anything about him taking pics in the room.
Right.
And you never said anything about Mr. Batey taking pictures.
Right.
Okay. But this was all before you knew that nothing was found on your phone, right?
Nothing was found on my phone.
But on July 17th, you didn't know that yet.
Right.
Okay. When a video was sent out and Mr. Boyd told you he saw your shoe
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
video, you seemed to be surprised
Right. Yes, ma'am.
because you're pretty careful to stay out of the pictures and videos, right?
No, ma'am, because I didn't know they was sent out.
Okay. And in your statement, July 17, 2013, you also stated Mr. Batey never said that this is our plan to cover up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He never said that.
And I don't think you, no, ma'am.
And you also stated that Vandenburg planned to have sex with her and ejaculate in her so they could find his DNA, right?
He stated he was going to have sex with her to ensure her that nothing happened to her that night.
Okay. But that's not what you said on July 17th. It was a bit different, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On July 17th, you also said you didn't see any condoms.
Yes, ma'am.
But this was all before you found out that your fingerprints were on a condom box, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And As recent as January 2015, you testified that you never saw anyone put their penises in the girl's anus or vagina.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Mr. McKenzie, you testified on direct about your still being out on bond with no restrictions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Your bond was $50,000,
Yes, ma'am.
the lowest of everybody's?
Sustain.
I want to now talk to you about your fourth interview. Is this the interview that you had with the DA's office?
Yes, ma'am.
And with your attorneys there?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this the interview that you had after you were indicted in this case on 5 counts of rape and 2 counts of ag sexual battery?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is this the one that you feel is the one that you told the truth in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you met with them, you were told how serious the case was, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And how aggravated rape carries very significant time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you met with them after you received the discovery in your case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You now knew the evidence against you?
Yes, ma'am.
Had you saw the videos in this matter?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get this interview immediately after you found out that your fingerprints were on the condom box?
Yes, ma'am.
And you told them this was from your memory, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And this was going to be a year later memory, right?
Yes, ma'am.
In this one, you said everyone went in the room and everyone was laughing and giggling, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you all were laughing and giggling because Mr. Batey was drunk, right?
I said all of us was, if I'm not.
One second, Your Honor. In this interview from July 14th,
July 14th?
yes, 2014, not September 14th, 2014. I apologize. Your story is now that Cory isn't clowning, but you are saying now that he came in and started touching her breasts.
Make sure you refer to him as Mr. Batey.
Mr. Batey, I apologize.
Yes, ma'am.
And this was the first time you were saying that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Your story now is that he came in and pulled her panties down.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the first time you're saying that?
I don't think it's the first time.
You don't believe that's the first time you're saying that he came in and started pulling her panties down?
No, ma'am.
When else did you say it?
I think I said in my statements that it was small talk and Cory started to address the young lady on the floor.
On July 17th, you actually said that he was clowning around. You never mentioned
I
panties.
described it different, but that's what I was meaning.
You're mumbling. I can't understand what you're saying.
I described it different in those statements.
You're saying you described it differently at those stages? Was that one of the times you were telling the truth, or which one? We don't know.
Ma'am, in those prior statements, I tried to cover up as much as I can until all the evidence came out.
Until all the evidence came out? Okay. Now, September 14, 2014, you immediately said that Mr. Batey was sticking his finger in her, pulling his clothes down in her mouth.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was the first time you were saying that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you previously stated over and over you never saw his penis.
Right.
Okay. But now you're certain you saw it?
I saw him grabbing his penis area, just trying to put it in.
Alrighty.
But you need to clarify, talking about mouth or vagina.
Okay.
I said mouth.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I seen both.
According to your 914 statement, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were certain of this after you were indicted for aggravated rape for penile penetration of the mouth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then you told them that Mr. Batey put his butt in her face.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And after that, according to you, he went back down, got between her legs, and attempted to have sex with her.
Yes, ma'am.
When previously you stated you didn't think he had sex with her.
I said attempted.
Okay. And in your previous statements, you stated you didn't think he had sex with her.
Right.
So in September of 2014, when they asked you whether he had sex with her, you said, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly now you're certain of it.
Well, he told me the day after. I just didn't want to say it in my prior statements because I was still lying, trying to cover up for my friends and myself.
Okay. And you're certain of it after you were indicted for aggravated rape for penile penetration of the vagina, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You tell them someone gave you a condom.
Yes, ma'am.
Like, you also said Cory gave you his phone.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And this was after denying you did anything, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And this was after you found out your prints were on the condom box.
Yes, ma'am.
Did someone tell you to touch yourself?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, according to you, in September of 2014, you look over and Mr. Batey is fingering and taking her clothes off, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're certain of this.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe you just on direct said that he touched her with his finger digitally.
Yes, ma'am.
What does that mean?
With his fingers.
So he touched her digitally. And you're certain of this after you're charged for aggravated rape for digital penetration of the vagina.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a link to this stating in charge. The indictment is not specific as to specific things like that. So he wouldn't have known he was charged.
All right.
Your Honor, the indictments, because he was indicted at this time, do tell in specific what he is being charged for. They'll say aggravated rape, and then it'll go on for doing this and doing that. So he knew that, and he just testified that he knew that. So
He knew what?
that this was, when he was certain of this, after he was charged with aggravated rape for penile penetration of the vagina.
Yeah, but you brought up digital penetration.
And that is also one of his aggravated rape charges that would have been found in his indictments. So he has knowledge that he is charged with that. In September of 2014, according to you, Mr. Banks only placed the bottle near her vagina, but Mr. Batey shoved it in there, right?
I'm not sure if I said that.
You're not sure if you said that?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I give him the transcript to refresh his recollection?
You may.
You will read that highlighted area to yourself. Done? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
In September of 2014, you stated that Banks only placed the bottle near her vagina, but Mr. Batey shoved it in there. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll take that. And today, on direct, you stated you're not sure who placed the bottle
Yes, ma'am.
in her behind.
Yes, ma'am.
And you are charged with aggravated rape for anal penetration with the bottle. Correct?
Well, that's not what the indictment says.
Does he not know whether, Your Honor, he can't answer whether he's charged with that?
Well, please tell the state makes an election of offenses. I don't think all he knows is what he's charged with.
Right. Right, and the indictment does not specifically state that.
So, Your Honor, is he not able to testify whether he knows that or not, that he's charged with that? Had he, however he may find it out, he can testify yes or no whether he knows that.
Well, I think I've made my ruling, I believe.
And you're saying he can't?
I'm saying that the indictment does not state that.
Okay.
You need not ask that question.
Now, according to you, July 2014, Your Honor, may we have a sidebar?
Okay.
Stand up if you need to, stretch or whatever.
Mr. McKenzie,
Yes, ma'am.
in September 2014, Mr. Batey put his finger in both her anal and her vagina, according to you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And now, amazingly, you were able to see both of these inserts clearly,
Yes, ma'am.
even though you just testified that you didn't have a good vantage point.
I wasn't asked that. You asked me that.
I asked you, did you have a good vantage?
Wait a minute. The court reporter did not hear his response. Say that again.
Can you ask the question again?
Yes, sir. I asked you previously, did you have a bad angle? And you stated to a certain extent, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I just asked you that now
Please clarify bad angle when out of 30 minutes, what he's trying to...
him testifying for him.
Well, I mean, you have to clarify what, I don't know whether you're talking about September the 14th or earlier today. I don't know.
I went from September
Well, but you
2000,
have to state that. I mean,
That's fine.
We don't know. I don't know.
right. Today, I just asked you, did you have a bad angle? You stated to a certain extent, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But on September 2014, you testified that you were clearly able to see.
Well, he didn't testify as such.
Well, I apologize. You made a statement, September 2014, that Mr. Batey put his finger in both her anal and her vagina, and you saw that, right?
Yes, ma'am. The pictures clearly show it.
And so you saw the pictures, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you knew.
Like I said before, I was trying to cover it up until it can be proven. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. September 2014 interview. You stated it was all on Cory's phone when asked about taking videos.
I'm not sure of that.
Okay? You don't remember saying I had both phones, but I took a video with Cory's phone.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay?
I thought you meaning everything was on Cory's phone.
But September 2014, you also knew that nothing was found on your phone.
Yes, ma'am.
In September 2014, after you had finished going through your statement, you asked for help in the interview. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You specifically, when after you were asked if there was anything else you could think of, you say, is there anything else I missed? Please, like, help me, right?
Yes, ma'am. I was talking to my lawyers. We had went over the sequence of things numerous of times, and so I was asking, because there's so much happened, was there anything I missed or something I left out?
You went over the sequence of things.
Yes, ma'am.
with the sequence not be in your memory?
Yes, ma'am.
You were told that they can't help you. It's got to be your memory, right?
Correct.
You then told them, well, can we go back over the storyline?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you want to go over the storyline that would keep you from getting kicked off your new team?
No, ma'am. I wanted to go back over the storyline that I had told them.
You wanted to go over the new, truthful storyline, right?
That's hard to believe. Ask your question.
It is. He's asked, it's been asked and answered.
So after, on July 2014, you asked to go back over the storyline. You then agree at the end that Cory penetrated with his fingers, vaginally and anally, put a bottle in her, and this was the first time that you were saying these things.
Some of them, yes, ma'am.
And you added, and he slapped her butt.
I think I said that before. I'm not sure though.
July 2004, September 2014, at the end, you added that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to talk about drinks. Now, the only thing that has been consistent about any of your testimonies,
To get to that frame of a question, Your Honor.
Yeah.
okay,
Ask a question, please.
you feel that Cory had a lot to drink.
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all had drinks in the dorm rooms and then went to East Hall where Mr. Batey drank more.
Yes, ma'am.
You remembered vodka and strawberries and whatever else that people had to share.
Yes, ma'am.
And in your testimony given January 2015, you stated Mr. Batey was drinking at East Hall, but you didn't see what Mr. Batey was drinking at East Hall, but he was drinking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Is that a prior consistent statement? I think that's what it testified to.
I'm not sure.
We're going to show some of the surveillance that's already been admitted into evidence.
That was the time before we went into the restroom.
And,
In the restroom.
okay, so you were freaking out in the restroom,
Yes, ma'am.
and a couple of minutes later, you weren't freaking out anymore?
Yes, because Vandenburg had told us, chill, told us, dude, chill out, it's going to be okay, He was flushing the condoms down the toilet and everything. So we just calmed down.
You appear to be calm in that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did Vandenburg, was he coaching you all to do whatever?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, is there anyone else who is going to be able to corroborate your many changes in testimony?
I think that's an improper question. I don't even understand it.
I don't understand what she asked.
Well, I'm going to...
I can rephrase. Now that you're telling the truth here,
Yes, ma'am.
is there anybody else who can corroborate this?
Well, he can't answer that
What?
question. How could he answer that question?
Your Honor, I'm just asking if he knows anyone else who can corroborate what he's saying here today. And if he doesn't, he can say, I don't know.
I'm not understanding your question.
The truth you're telling now,
Yes, ma'am.
is there anyone else who feels that same way as you?
I'm not sure how other people feel.
Okay. Wasn't sure if Mr. Banks was here, or y'all were on the same page?
That's again, he can't testify about Mr. Banks.
I'm not asking him to testify about Mr. Banks, just was merely asking him, was anybody else, but I'll move on.
Oh, please, thank you.
I don't have any further questions for this witness.
Redirect.
Talking about the end of your statement that you gave to prosecutors with your attorneys, how many times had you and your attorneys been over you attempting to remember what happened?
Countless.
And who was your question? Who were you asking the question to?
All my lawyers.
And in that meeting, did any attorney or prosecutor, what did they tell you to
Just told
tell?
me to tell what I remember from my knowledge and not to create anything.
Now, as far as talking about Cory drinking, you've been drinking with Cory Batey before?
Yes, sir.
How many occasions had you all been out?
Every other weekend, probably.
So that would have been every other weekend for a year?
Yes, sir.
Technically, that's outside the scope of my cross. I had never asked him if he'd been drinking with Mr. Batey before.
She asked about his level of intoxication, Your Honor.
I did not ask about his level of intoxication.
Well, she said, didn't you say he was drunk and all this kind of stuff? I think that's intoxication.
Yeah, I believe so.
That was for June 23rd only.
What?
That was for June 23rd only, in the statements he gave about June 23rd only, not about every other day.
He can ask.
And on this particular night, on June 23rd, did he appear differently than other nights when you're out drinking?
No, sir.
So, again, describe what you meant by buzzed.
Feeling the alcohol.
Talk about functioning.
We was able to walk, talk on our own.
Yeah. And when you gave your statements to the police, were you still attempting to cover for yourself and your buddies, or are you attempting to tell the whole truth?
Check the leading.
It's not a leading question, it gives him an option.
I didn't hear you.
Said in his statements to the two statements to the police, was he attempting to cover for himself and his buddies, or was he attempting to tell the whole truth?
I was covering up.
There's been some talk about angles sometime during this, but were you in the same place the entire 30 minutes?
No, sir.
Okay. And what you testified that you observed today, were you able to see that with your own eyes?
Yes, sir.
And as far as, what, if anything, did you see Mr. Batey put in Ms. Lackey's mouth?
He's
Your Honor, ask an answer. It's just inflammatory.
Well, I think she put in an inconsistent statement and asked him if it was true about something that wasn't clear to me. I think we've got a right to clarify. She asked him about specific acts.
Well, the inquiry was made into that, so you can ask.
What, if anything, did you see Mr. That's all the question I have.
Recross.
I just asked you on cross, did you see Mr. Batey's penis? And you said no, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So how could you see his penis go in her mouth?
If I lean over in front of someone's face, my private parts going to their mouth, you see that, right?
So you're saying you did not see his penis? Or are you saying you saw his penis?
I seen him putting his penis in her mouth.
So now you're saying you saw his penis,
I'm
correct?
saying I seen him trying to put his penis in her mouth.
He has not answered the question, Your Honor. Did you see his penis or not?
I seen him holding his penis to insert it in her mouth.
That is a yes or no question, sir. Did you see his penis or not?
Yeah, he's answered the question.
He has not.
About what he saw in the penis. No.
He has not said whether or not he saw his penis.
Answer yes or no, then you can explain your answer.
I didn't see his penis, but I seen him holding his penis area, placing it in her mouth.
No further questions.
All right, any further redirect? Thank you, sir. You're excused. We're going to take a 10-minute break. All rise.